Hello, 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 everybody. We're back to talking about some more Big City Greens today. We just had a couple new episodes released this weekend, and I've been pretty excited to see these episodes, mainly because last week I was talking about The Move, the big special that had a very big change in pace for Big City Greens. I just said big like 3 times in that sentence, what the heck. But The Move was such an interesting episode because not only was the episode itself really good, but it also paved the way for the rest of the season to take place in the country rather than in Big City. So I think these 2 episodes actually give us a really nice start to this. So I won't be spending too much time on the Tilly B plots. In both these episodes, there are Tilly B plots. The first one has a pretty good Tilly B plot. The second one I will summarize within like 10 seconds because it's fun to watch, but not really too much fun to talk about. So our first episode to talk about is Countryside. And this one is a pretty good episode because it's the very first episode that comes right after The Move. And it proves that even without the Greens being in Big City, they can still create really, really fun episodes. And I think the best part of that is thanks to the already established family dynamic. You see a lot in this episode of the Cricket versus Bill dynamic, which is a classic throughout the entire show. How Cricket's always getting into trouble and Bill's always trying to pull him out of it, and he's always frustrated and angry with them, always getting on him for getting into trouble. It's definitely one of the best dynamics in the entire show, and it like never gets old. It never gets old just seeing Bill chasing after Cricket while Cricket's going and causing chaos. It's so enjoyable to watch. To start the episode, we have Cricket and Remy just sort of chilling in bed in the morning, talking about the good times in Big City. And while they're talking, Remy brings up that, well, I guess we're not going to have any more adventures considering we're no longer in Big City since the country's so boring compared to Big City. To which Cricket takes offense to this and says, hold on now, Remy, everything can be fun, the country especially. So Cricket and Remy start rushing outside, and then it pans over to Tilly, and we see that she has been up all night thanks to Cricket and Remy talking. So her sort of B plot for this episode is trying to find a place for her to stay that isn't in the same room as Cricket and Remy. To summarize the Tilly B plot in this episode, she basically goes around into different corners of the house. She goes inside Bill's closet, she goes inside the chicken coop, she goes underneath the sink, all to try and make a new room out of those places because she doesn't want to live with Cricket and Remy anymore since they're just too loud. So that's pretty much what Tilly's doing this entire episode, and we'll get back to her at the end of this episode. While these 2 plots are starting, good old Joe from the convention episode actually visits, which is pretty cool. And I'm surprised I didn't think of Joe sooner, considering he was one of Bill's old country friends. It makes sense to bring him back now. So good old Joe comes over and gives Bill some worms just as like a welcoming gift or whatever, and they're just like, good old Bill, good old Joe. That's about it. That's all we really see of Joe in this episode, but it's still nice to see a recurring character again. Bill was super happy to see him. So while that's happening, Cricket and Remy start going off on little adventures. Cricket shows Remy all the different things you can do in the country. They start riding sheep, they start riding wagons, they play on with the farm animals, with the pig, they play with tree sap, they play with chili peppers, like they just do everything that they can. They pretty much whatever their imagination allows them to do, they're gonna do. However, being caught up in the fun, Remy takes it a bit too far and accidentally throws the worms that good old Joe gave to Bill at Bill. To which, of course, Remy starts freaking out, knowing he's gonna get punished for it. But Cricket, of course, knowing Cricket, he's like, nah, we gotta double down. So what he does is he grabs more worms and throws them into Bill's face, to which makes Bill furious, and he starts chasing the boys around the farm. So they're running away from him. They run into a corn maze, and then they run up into the attic of a barn and say, oh, Bill will never find us here. And then he bursts through the floor of the attic and just grabs Cricket. It's so funny, dude. I love this Bill always chasing Cricket down. It's some of the funniest stuff ever. So the whole time they're being chased by Bill, Remy has been like, Cricket, I think we should just give up. We should just come clean. You know, we're just making things worse by running away. And Cricket keeps wanting Remy to keep doubling down, saying that everything in the country can be fun. This is fun. That's what he's been trying to teach him this whole day, is that everything can be fun. So when he's finally cornered by Bill, Remy takes a page out of Cricket's book and decides to swoop in on a rope, knocking Bill over and then rescuing Cricket and flinging them outside of the barn. And then Remy finally understands, hey, this is so fun. I'm literally shaking. I love this feeling. You were right, Cricket. Anything can be fun. And then while Remy's giving that little speech, Bill shows up behind them, completely angry, catches them, and grounds them by locking them in their room and even boarding up the window so they have nowhere else to go. While this happens, we get to the finale of the Tilly B plot, to which Nancy shows Tilly her very own room. I guess it was just here. I don't really know what room this was supposed to be, whose room this was, because obviously it wasn't Nancy's because she's in the RV, and it's not Bill's, so it's just a room that's in the house. And Nancy says that this is going to be Tilly's room. And I think this is like a really nice thing. We actually see some really good body language here from Tilly, where she seems quite nervous to be on her own because she's never been without a roommate. She thought she was gonna maybe bunk with Bill or Nancy. She's kind of nervous to be on her own, and you can kind of see that in her body language. She seems very reluctant. But after some convincing from Nancy, saying that she'll finally have her own privacy and won't have to worry about noisy Cricket and Remy, Tilly agrees to take the room, so that's what she does. She also starts practicing yodeling, which is like a joke that was used throughout the episode. And then we get to the finale of the A-plot, where Cricket is freaking out over being locked up in his room, doesn't want to be grounded, and says, well, I guess everything isn't fun. And then Remy here, once again, gives a little speech, kind of like in the last episode. We actually get a Remy speech in this episode, in the next episode, and in the previous episode. Kind of crazy. I really love to see this sort of side of Remy, because I think I mentioned this in the last episode, or maybe in my Season 3B episode before the move came out, that Remy's character is sometimes inconsistent, and I love it when they do like this kind of stuff with him, because there are times when it feels like Remy is completely incapable of like thinking and doing anything for himself. There's like, I think it's mainly used as like a joking thing, and it's kind of annoying when they do that to his character. Which is why I'm glad, like, in these last few episodes, they've actually been giving him, the treatment he deserves. Where, as opposed to Cricket, who is completely chaotic and just jumps into things all the time, Remy is usually the one to think about things a little harder. He's a lot more cautious than Cricket, a lot more nervous. Tends to think things through, as opposed to where Cricket does not. So it makes them become really good friends, because they have strengths and weaknesses, and I really, really like that. So what Remy does is he gives Cricket a little speech while Cricket's complaining about being grounded and saying, oh, I guess I was wrong. Remy says that, no, you're not wrong. We still have each other. We can still make anything fun. We can make grounded being fun as long as we have each other. So he learned from Cricket in that episode and made Cricket eat his own words. So what they start doing is they start having a good old pillow fight. Tilly walks by the room and is like, well, I guess I made the right choice considering, they're being loud at night. Real quick, I didn't mention this in my original recording, but Tilly also mentions Saxon, and she wonders where Saxon is. We don't really know where Saxon is at the moment. And she says that she'll probably finish unpacking tomorrow, so maybe in the next episode we'll see Saxon. I don't know. And the episode ends with Bill yelling at them once again, and they say the funny line that is, everything can be fun. And he's like, no, it's not. Whatever. And then he just goes to bed. It's a good episode. It's a good episode. I think it's a really good episode that highlights the friendship between Remy and Cricket. I think it's definitely one of the most enjoyable duos on the screen. I was talking about Cricket and Bill earlier, but Cricket and Remy is also definitely a really good pairing as well. So the next episode is Junk Mountain. I think this one's a little bit more interesting than the previous one, since we actually get introduced to some new characters. The episode starts with the Greens arriving at this junkyard. Bill is there to get some parts to fix up the clutch, because the clutch is always breaking down. Tilly is there to look at cars for herself. That's kind of her B plot. I'll get into that in a second. And then Cricket and Remy are there to obviously hang out and play. But they're also there to meet an old friend of Cricket's named Hector. So Cricket starts reminiscing about Hector and how they always used to play this game called Junk Mountain, where they just go up onto a mountain of junk and play. It's just like a game they played. And that's what they're there to do today. They want to start playing Junk Mountain. They invite Tilly, but she says no, she's got her own thing to do, which is to find a car for herself. Obviously she can't drive, but she knows that the clutch will probably not be around when it's time for her to drive.
And I don't think the clutch will hold out until someday.
So she's gonna look around the junkyard and try to pick out a car that she thinks she'll like. So basically what Tilly does in this episode, it's pretty simple. She goes from car to car in the junkyard and sits in the car and imagines she's driving it and kind of just goes on these little daydreams. Nothing really too crazy, and at the end she ends up finding a wheel and says that this is her car because she can just get inside the wheel and just roll with it. It's a pretty funny B-plot, but other than that, there's not much here, so let's just leave it at that. So after Tilly leaves for her little adventure, Cricket runs into Hector's little sister, pretty much tells her to buzz off and says, where's Hector? Because he's looking for Hector, not Hector's little sister. And then Hector does appear, and it turns out that Hector has had a growth spurt and is actually a teenager now. Everyone's pretty shocked by this, and Bill starts treating him more like an adult, which I thought was pretty interesting because I'm sure teenagers do want to be seen more as an adult, not just seen as a kid. But Remy starts getting pretty nervous, and he's like, well, I've never hung out with a teenager before. I can't really understand them. They're just too weird and different from us. And Cricket assures Remy that, no, it's just the same old Hector. He's just the same old guy. And Hector seems to be kind of, seeming like the same old guy for right now. So Hector, Cricket, and Remy start heading to this little sidecar place, or like a little hideout, I'm not really sure what it's called, where they used to keep all their armor and battle weapons for playing on Junk Mountain. Except when they go in there, it has been completely transformed into like this chill man cave, I guess I should say. I don't know. Basically, what Hector's up to now is he just wants to be all chill. He's doing the stereotypical teen things like using Axe body spray, playing loud music and saying, "Oh, you'll never understand me." You know, it's very typical teenager stuff. Stuff that you'll see in like Gravity Falls, like the typical stereotype teen things. So while Cricket's looking around this little hideout trying to find their old battle gear, he finds this little picture, and it turns out that it's a drawing that Hector drew of his girlfriend. And we just start learning more about Hector and like pretty much what he's up to, that he's just like some chill teenager, and he likes making his own music and his own art. I don't know, it's definitely kind of freaking out Cricket and Remy at this point, but they're just like whatever. And then Cricket eventually finds the battle gear that was stored away, and he starts saying, "Oh, Hector, you were holding out on us." To which Hector replies, "Oh, I was just about to throw that stuff away." But then once he takes a look at his old shield that he used to play with, he's like, "Oh yeah, this does bring back memories." And he starts kind of getting into that vibe, you know, where he's like, "Oh, you know what? I'm actually, you know, kind of having fun. Let's start playing the game." Except when he's starting to finally get in the mood, that's when his teenager friends come over, and he immediately switches gears. He like kind of looks embarrassed, drops his shield, walks over to his girlfriend, and they're just like, "Bruh, what's up?" They're just like, it's like really definitely like an exaggerated form of like moody, depressed teenagers or whatever. I don't know. It's kind of funny, honestly. It's kind of funny. And they're basically just like, "Hey, want to go chill at the chill place?" And like, "Yeah, that sounds chill." So they leave and go chill. That's it. It's kind of funny. But Cricket is not satisfied. He wanted to play with Hector. So what he thinks is going on is that Hector's mind is being possessed or controlled by the other teenagers, and that he needs to go rescue him so that they can play together. They run over and find this teen hangout place, which honestly looks pretty dangerous, but whatever. So he's chilling with his girlfriend, and Cricket has the idea to walk over to him and pretty much tackle him while he's wearing like a bunch of metal gear that he took from the hideout earlier. And then Remy uses like, I don't really know what it's called, but you know, like those giant magnet things that they have at the junkyards to lift up cars. He uses that to lift up Cricket and Hector and take them all the way up to Junk Mountain so that they can play together. And I think this is actually a really nice moment that's not like super stereotypical, because Hector, of course, once he gets up there, he was kind of freaking out like, "Yo, Cricket, what the heck are you doing, man?" And then Cricket tells him the truth, saying, "Oh, we just wanted to get you away from that place so that you could play with us. Come on, let's play Junk Mountain." And I was so happy that Hector didn't just like completely start yelling at Cricket. I was half expecting just to be like, "Oh, here we go. Hector's gonna start yelling and saying that he's embarrassed." But no, this actually feels a lot more realistic, right? Because he's meeting an old friend who's definitely a lot younger than him, and he's trying to grow up. So it really shows in Hector's character, because he starts trying to play with them. He's like, "Oh, you know what? You're the same old crazy Cricket. Let's just play. You know what? I'm down. Let's play." However, when he starts playing, you can tell that he's only like half into it. He like kind of is having fun, but he keeps overhearing the laughter of his friends, and he keeps looking back like, "Oh, my friends are over there. My friends are over there." And Cricket's going all in, but eventually he realized that Hector is just not into it. He's just not into it anymore. And he like, in Hector, what I really like is that he tries. He's like, "Oh no, we can do this. We can do this. I'm down." But Cricket eventually does sort of give in and realize that, "Hey, your friends are calling you. I'm feeling tired anyway. Why don't you go back to your friends?" And he's like, "Oh, thanks, dude. It was nice catching up." And then that's the last we see of Hector in that episode. And I really thought that was good, because I was half expecting Hector to just start yelling at Cricket, but instead he's just really understanding, and he kind of lets himself become a kid again. You know, like when you're a teenager, you're in like those sort of awkward times where you're like still, it's like you're in that transition period from kid into an adult. So you want to be treated like an adult, but you still want to do kid things, but you don't want other people to see you doing kiddish things. Like for example, when I was in middle school, I got bullied a lot, and I didn't really care because I didn't have any friends, so whatever. But I would bring my Kirby plushes. I had like these little Kirby plushes. They're really cute. I'd bring them on the bus, and I would love bringing them on the bus to school because I thought it was really fun. I just liked playing with my one other friend that I had there, except I was made fun of all the time because of this. I would also draw Kirby all the time, and people made fun of me for it all the time. Even my teacher said it was becoming too much. That's just because I was doodling, but like whatever. It was just a lot. So I eventually sort of I never grew out of liking Kirby. I still love Kirby. Kirby's awesome to this day. But there was a point where I think it was like in 7th and 8th grade, because this is a lot in 6th grade, but in like 7th and 8th grade, I sort of hid that side of me or I didn't want other people to see it, right? Where I was like, oh, I'm not into Kirby. I don't draw Kirby, but I just didn't let anybody else see it. And that's kind of how I feel like with Hector here, where it's like you can kind of indulge in those kiddish things when you're around other kids or around people who won't judge you for who you are. I think that's really cool, and it feels very realistic, as opposed to just, oh, I'm a teenager. All I think about is angst and stuff. I liked it. I liked it so much how Hector felt like an actual teenager who's not just a jerk all the time. He just felt like a guy trying to fit in with the crowd, but also still had that childlike wonder, but also trying to be an adult at the same time. I don't know. I think it was a really good, realistic portrayal of a teenager. Early in the episode, there are definitely some stereotypes, but like definitely in like this ending, it just felt really nice that Hector wasn't just like some stereotypical rude teenager. I don't know. Maybe I'm just overanalyzing this scene. I personally just really liked that Hector didn't turn out to be like some jerk and was actually, you know, trying to get along with his old friend. And then of course, once again, like I was saying earlier, it's time for another Remy speech. And this one I thought was actually pretty interesting that I didn't really catch on to the symbolism here. But how Remy starts his speech is he starts apologizing to Cricket and says, hey, I'm sorry, Cricket. Sometimes you just have to let go of old things. They can't stay around forever. Like, just look at all this stuff around us. Look at this junkyard. Look at all this stuff that people have said goodbye to that they just don't need anymore. I really liked that symbolism. I thought that was actually pretty interesting that I wasn't really expecting from this episode. Kind of neat. But Remy then ends his speech by saying, we're not like that though, because we're always going to be friends. And then they just hug it out. And I thought, again, that was a really nice moment for their friendship once again. It was really sweet. So after that touching moment, they start getting back into the mood of wanting to play on good old Junk Mountain. And they start saying that, oh, well, you know, it would be a lot more fun if we had a third person, to which a grappling hook appears and we see Lupita, which is the name of Hector's younger sister from earlier in the episode. She appears and is like, hey, do you mind if I play with you guys? So the episode ends with all three of them starting to play on Junk Mountain. I thought it was really nice, where it felt like a really nice episode with growing up, where you see Hector kind of move on from this childish game, where it's like he still holds it dear in his heart, and it's not something he wants to forget, but it's not something he'll do nowadays, like on his own. But then we also see Lupita, who, she wasn't in the episode much, but she was much younger when Cricket used to be around here. And now that she's older, she can play with them on Junk Mountain. So I thought it was a really nice episode, kind of showcasing that growing up sort of thing. And we've been seeing a lot of elements of change within Big City recently. Like a couple episodes ago, we had the massive change with the move. Last episode, we had Tilly switching out her room and sort of growing as a person, being able to have a separate living space from her brother. And then this episode, we see Hector and Cricket's relationship and how the two of them have reconnected, but not in the way that they imagined. And then also meeting a new friend who is now able to play with them since they're a bit older. I don't know, I definitely think it's a really nice episode that showcases the simplicity of childhood and also growing up alongside of it. I don't know. I thought it was a really good episode, along with the last episode too. I think this one I like a little bit more. I thought Junk Mountain was a lot more interesting than Countryside, but they're both very good episodes, so yeah, let me know what you thought about both these episodes. I thought they were really good, and it makes me excited to see what the rest of the season's gonna bring, especially considering that I think Grandma will eventually be coming, because we know that she's in the theme song, at least at some point. Because like I mentioned, there's two versions of the Season 3B song, and one of them is with Grandma and then one of them is out. So maybe we'll see Grandma eventually come join the others on the farm and then leave Glory to take care of the house back in Big City. I don't know. Maybe she just visits. We'll have to see. I'm excited to see what happens next, and I hope you are too. So I'll see you all, everybody. Have yourselves a great day, and thank you for watching. Bye-bye.